Hey, Cheryl.
Hi there. Hello. Hi. Hi.
It's a walking area, it's not much better. And it's mostly, this is mostly a good portion of the clear area. Solid trail. So it's not artificial trail, it's nice. It does make sense. Like all things.
I'm not sure if it's triangular. I was thinking about this. So I think everybody else will do that.
Okay.
I should have got you, I'm sorry.
Just say
Just
what
don't
you
judge.
Don't tell them.
Since I didn't see
Hey,
you.
they got there.
Right. That wasn't intentional.
Oh, and.
How are you?
Yeah.
I don't know how long.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Get my request for a call.
John, did you ever try to play water polo in college too, or did you just do high school?
I was recruited to play college, but there's no money in the sport.
To
To go down to those colleges, you gotta fork out a ton of
I
money, because there's
did an
not
update
money.
on it yesterday, thinking that.
There's a couple of local nowadays that
Yeah.
are, you know, like McKendree or, you know, something like that, but Lindenwood.
Oh, they have one? I didn't know.
Are we ready to get started?
There's like a,
Okay. Carl, am I 30 seconds too early, or are we okay? Carly, you want to go ahead and call roll?
Chair Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Here.
Councilmember Rose is out. Councilmember Dillard. Councilmember Edens. Here. Councilmember Jordan. Here. Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
And Councilmember Worther.
Present.
Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. Do we have any adjustments to the minutes, or can somebody make a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
There was just one thing I noted, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Tim?
As I recall, there was a lot of discussion surrounding the equestrian efforts, and I know Ms. Jordan particularly was very passionate about it. And I thought, at least from my notes, I thought we, either as an organization collectively, and I don't recall it was by motion, but specifically, I thought you took that on as an item for the equestrian area.
Yes.
Okay, it's just not noted in the minutes that it was kind of given to her to work on.
She was supposed to be contacting.
Yeah, so that's the only change I would do,
We
just
need
to add that to the
in.
minutes, so it's noted, so that way we don't lose track of it sometime in the
Yeah.
future.
Thank
You
you,
mean we
Tim.
saddled
Tim.
her with it?
Motion to adjourn.
drop.
Instead of no, we can say nay the whole meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one too, Laura. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve
Approved
as
by
amended.
Niall
I'll second.
and Councilman Bertolino.
Worther.
All in
That's
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, we can move on into any public comments that we have. It looks like we have one individual that just arrived from the public. Kelly, do you have anything that you need to participate with tonight? Okay, thank you for being here, though. Okay, moving on to discussion items. We're going to start with the budget first because Sam's got to go over to another meeting and then he'll be back so that we can work on our executive session. And if I could get a motion from someone for moving that executive session from in the middle of the meeting to the end of the meeting so that it's a little bit easier logistically to turn the cameras on and off. Ms. Edens and Mr. Worther seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thanks you guys for making those adjustments, and I'll turn the table over to you now, Sam.
Thank you, Chairwoman Dodwell, and good evening, everybody. The memo you have in front of you has just information on the preliminary 2020 budget for the Economic Development Division. So what you'll see below is basically a breakdown of 2019 compared to the 2020 proposed. not very many changes. We tweaked the travel budget just a little bit. Looking at the following page, you'll see sort of the two-year history from 2017, 2018. Conversations with our economic development manager, the 2017 budget was a little bit higher due to some of the certification requirements, some of the continuing education there. It's dipped off a little bit, so we estimated this year budget for about $5,000 in this current fiscal year. But we wanted to keep that still relatively consistent with actual expenditures, so we're putting in there for $7,000 for next year. And then consultant costs is probably the other significant item worth conversation, and that's really a placeholder in case there's a request from this committee or the council as a whole to study a specific issue. We want to keep those dollars in there as well. So don't really have any planned expenditures for those unless we're directed by council.
Well, I know at the last meeting that we had, there was some discussion about the fact that we haven't done a readjustment, or it's about time for us to do a review of our current goals, tasks for economic development as a city as a whole. And so I don't know that we want to, if we want to have someone come from the outside, if we want to do it inside internally, what kind of surveying we might like to do of our residents. I'd really like to send a survey out to the residents to find out what kinds of things they would like to see within the city, town center specifically, so that we can understand what kinds of potential businesses we could attract within the city. That's just my perspective, so I'd like to open the floor to all of you and see how you would like to move forward. Yes?
What was the last time we did a survey like
For this purpose, there were probably two activities I can recall, and Joe will know more than I on this, but as far as the economic development piece of these discussions, the master plan did include a pretty significant survey to residents and business owners. That was done in 2016. And around that same time, when Housing Levine was contracted to put together the economic development guide, that bound document that was completed in 2016, that included involvement from about 25 stakeholders, residents, business owners, property owners, developers, and so on. That was done around the same period. So those were both done around 2016. Separately from that, we did a survey last year in 2018, but it was more targeted for the Manchester Road Improvement Committee. Part of the scope for that committee was to identify desired improvements for the Manchester corridor. And we targeted 100 stakeholders, 100 property owners that had immediate frontage on that corridor, as well as posting a survey citywide on the Facebook and on the city website, including similar questions. But the last time we did any kind of comprehensive survey as far as the city's economic development program was around 2016.
2016, okay, so we're moving into 2020, so I don't know if I'm pushing it too soon, then we can wait, but I just know that the group that did the survey, I kind of felt, or not did these surveys, but Housing Levine that did their particular work, I felt like that was somewhat cookie cutter and didn't speak specifically in many ways to Wildwood. There were references to, I think, other types of cities in that document that looked to me to be cut and pasted in instead of doing a really comprehensive kind of review. And I'm not saying we have to go outside to another party, or I guess I'm just throwing out a possible idea to use some of that $10,000 to gather additional information, since it's been 3 or 4 years. Yes?
Yeah, Katie, my thought is, I think that we have the information that we need to move forward.
Okay.
And I hate to say it this way, but I think when you do those big surveys, you kind of get back the same stuff we got back
From
3 years
Housing
ago,
Levine.
or 4 years ago, whatever.
Okay.
Things haven't dynamically changed that much. And I think we probably need a few years of real activity and
Okay.
Implementation time as opposed to surveying again. So, plus we just had the parks, the year-long parks review, we've had the town center review. A couple things have come up in the last year that have really brought us in a lot of information. So I think it's a little premature to do another survey.
Is there any way we could use, I'll get to Tim and then I'll come back to you. Is there any way we could use some of that information from those other surveys that were done to help augment what we're doing in the economic development process? And nobody needs to answer that question immediately, but I just want to put that on the floor for further discussion. Tim's next. then
Yeah.
Niles.
Not to fully disagree with you, just partially. I would think there's, might be some value if we can do a targeted survey for specific economic climate in Wildwood. As we've seen with the past 3 years, the economy's really gone gangbusters in general overall. It might be nice to be able to get some survey results from a booming economy, relatively speaking, versus a post-recession economy, which we had out of the household vein.
Mhm.
I'd love to have some information along those lines. But maybe that's, maybe that's a later next year sort of thing as well,
Mhm.
not early in the year. So
Yeah.
that's the other side of it too. So while I say I'm not 100% disagreeing with you, I am to the point that, if we target it right and a little later in the year, I think maybe it's fine.
Julian, and then
Sure.
you can go next.
In the last 2 years, within the Economic Development Guide document, as part of the implementation chapter, it talks about using the guide on a daily basis, but also regularly checking it and determining if updates are needed. The guide instructs us to review it annually, do a thorough review after 3 years, and completely update it after 5 years. We've been looking through it over the last year or so to determine if there's any updates or review that are needed of the document at this point in time. And I believe the committee said it's good for what we need today, but at that 5-year mark, 2021, let's really take a look at it internally, not outsource it, but internally, figure out what updates need to be made. And maybe that's the good point in time to look at another survey.
That's the exact plan.
Okay. I do tend to agree a little bit with Tim, though, that the economy has changed since we had previously done this, and the high focus on retail only that was in that household Levine caused me some pause, I'm just going to say it that way, because I don't see how we can get a booming retail if we don't have daytime people here. And so I think we as a city need to figure out how do we draw daytime workers into the community in some fashion. I know we've got a lot of home-based workers that are in Wildwood, but if there's some way we could do that, that's just something that I'd like to see moving forward. But it doesn't have to be something that's done right now. But to Tim's statement, I think it might not be a bad idea to plan for doing some type of a survey, so we at least grasp what people are looking for. Sam?
Yeah, if I could just add, I know 2019 concludes our strategic goals and objectives for 2015 to 2019. So my thought, and I haven't presented this to full council yet, but use that opportunity or that discussion from the 2020 and 2024 goals to have this conversation with council to say, okay, what do we need to be focusing on over the next 5 years? And then coupled with that, do we need to look at sort of a citizen survey, either pre or post conversation about our strategic goals to ask the residents these types of questions. One thing about the Economic Development Guide that I did appreciate and thought was spot on was when you first start an economic development program, you need 3 or 4 years just to get your legs under you. And I think Julian has done an excellent job of repairing some relationships between the city and the business community. So I think we have a lot of positive momentum, but I will see a need in the next year or two to really sort of shift gears and start to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of those types of conversations, pursuing new business opportunities or what we can do to grow the existing businesses that we have.
Nice.
I agree with that, but I still would like to just give it until some of these other bigger items fall into place. So like the Prime is gonna bring in some retail and daytime activity. The Manchester Road improvement's gonna be done, the 109 is gonna be done, Village Green hopefully is going to be done. You know, there's gonna be some big chips falling into place that might really affect, and presidential election coming up in 2020, that changes, you know, public opinion quite a bit, you know, when it comes to the economy and stuff as well. So maybe waiting until after some of these pieces fall into place before we, you know, do the survey would be my idea.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure we were kind of all thinking long-term as a committee, what we'd like to see and what additional information needs to be collected as we go down the road over the next year. If there's anything specific we need to do, that's fine. If not, then I'm all for being economic and economically sound in the way that we use the information that we have. Yes, Lauren?
Yeah, I would just say maybe when we do decide to have the survey, maybe we think it's valuable and we just kind of set a non-binding rule that we just do it every 5 years after that.
Yeah.
Unless there's a really good reason not to. And just kind of keep data rolling in whenever we do it. Or 10 years or, you know, something on the,
Yeah, I've seen cities survey residents annually, which builds a good database. You know, you can identify some trends if you have the same question that you're asking 10 years in a row. You can start to see some changes.
See where things go up and down.
Attitudes or impressions. I think that might be a little bit on the far extreme side of things. Typically 2 to 3 year surveys have been pretty valuable. And I think to Councilmember Bertolino's point, once you start asking surveys, citizens to complete survey after survey after survey, you tend to get lower response rates, and you tend to hear then more from the constituents who are more upset with what's going on.
Yeah.
So you sometimes don't get a true picture of what the residents are feeling if you're doing it on a repetitive basis.
Tim. Dave goes first, I'm sorry, Tim will be next. Dave?
I was just gonna say, do you need a motion from the committee to approve this, this budget?
I think it would be helpful. We'll have this conversation as well as part of our overall admin and public works discussion, but we felt that was important.
But I applaud your efforts to keep the operating costs slightly down even over the budget of last year. That's good, knowing that money's getting tighter and tighter every year, so I appreciate that. So just to get it out in discussion, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the recommended budget.
Second.
Tim seconds. Tim, you had raised your hand. Do you
That
have
was
it?
what exactly.
That was what you were going to do. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Thank you very much, Tim.
Staying out for another 23 years.
Oh, hey, well, there you go.
Don't worry, I will.
We're not too argumentative on this. Okay, our next topic is hosting committee meetings at city businesses. And we started some discussion on this at the last meeting, and everybody thought it was a good idea. So, take it away.
Yeah, at the last meeting in September, the committee voted to place this on the meeting agenda for today. This had been discussed previously back in May, and Councilmember Stevens asked to be placed on this agenda for this meeting as well. The primary piece of this is the idea of potentially holding these monthly meetings of the Economic Development Committee potentially off-site at local businesses, as he mentioned at the last meeting, instead of bringing business owners in, taking this committee to the businesses directly for our monthly meetings. Maybe not every month, maybe every other month or every quarter, or twice a year, something to that extent. But just to give an idea, an opportunity for the committee to discuss that and see if it's something that's worth pursuing.
Yes, Miles.
Yeah, I obviously haven't brought this up, so I really like the idea.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would really hope too that we could visit some businesses that maybe have businesses in multiple locations. And so then we can go on site and see, well, how does this operate here in Wildwood? How does it operate at your other locations?
This would be a good place to do that.
Yeah, I did, you know, talk to 3 French Hens. You know, Jeannie was amenable. She was good. the Thai Bistro, I've spoken with him, Miller House. So I've already gotten some feelers out there, and they said yes. Some other people I talked to were like, no, you know,
We don't want
we're good.
12 people to come
Kind of
in.
busy at 6 o'clock, so.
Yeah.
But for any business that you know is willing to have us, I think it would be a great opportunity to get out into the community and kind of see firsthand what, you know, how businesses feel about, you know, what we do in Wildwood, whether it's sign regulations or, you know, lighting or anything else. So, so I'm all in favor. Even if we only do it, you know, 2 or 3 times a year. Even if we can only get out a little bit, but we still want to have most of the meetings here, I still think it would be a good idea to get out into the community. So.
Lauren?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. I would just defer to staff on whether or not we would want to do our traditional, if we have a lot on the agenda, I would do most of it here and then have a group field trip afterwards, just because it's live streamed and there's a better public record, or do what we did in historic preservation, which was when we had a site meeting to look at a site for historic approval. The entire agenda was just about that site. So I would either, you know, do most of the regular business here and then go, or just totally change the agenda so that it's site specific. And then I think we're more accountable to the public that way.
And that's where the discussion went back in May, was the component of the live stream piece of it. And the decision that was made months back to live stream all public meetings, primarily the standing committees. And so if we do offsite, how do we handle the live stream component of it? In a lot of meetings where we have double bookings, we have a meeting happening in the council chambers at the same time as we have one here. We do have the opportunity to record a meeting on any type of camera technology and post it to the website after the meeting's over. So that would give us the opportunity to do that offsite. It can be done on a camera, it can be done on a phone. The quality might not be as good, but it would still allow us to hold a meeting offsite and still record it if that's what the committee wants to do.
As long as it's fine with staff.
Yes, sir, Mr. King.
Yeah, I like the idea, and I think it's a great idea, but I like Lauren's idea that maybe we start the meeting at that location. So it's a benefit to that particular business owner that we're there, we are taping it, we're going to put it on live stream afterwards. And then maybe that's maybe the first half an hour, 45 minutes of our meeting, and we have discussions just like we normally do when we bring in a business owner, and then adjourn and come back here and do whatever business we need to conclude. So we're not really taking up all their time, but at the same time, they're getting the benefit of us being there. They're getting perhaps the advertising of it in terms of we are going to put it on live stream. And I feel good about going out on their territory and meeting with them.
I've got one question real quickly. I know when we've done some historic preservation meetings or other meetings, they've been special meetings and the focus is just on that particular site visit. And would we be better served to, if we go to Thai Bistro, we meet with the owner, we talk with him about what's important to him and the city of Wildwood. We see how the business is operating, what kind of the traffic is, and then we either come back here to finish our meeting or we make that a different day of the week, day of the month, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Mr.
just to
Werner.
give my thoughts on it. I think the idea is excellent. I think it's one we should definitely do. If you look at the list that was even provided from me, fully half of them, if not more, all have meeting spaces or spaces large enough to host a meeting without much of an issue. So I think we have to just be cognizant of where we go, whether or not we need to bring it back here. In other cases, it may make more sense just to stay put, get the rest of the business done, record it, and we'll post it later if we're concerned about that.
No.
I think that we could, as long as we plan out the agendas correctly, like I don't think that we should have our discussion of the budget meeting offsite and not on live stream. But I think that if we're doing, you know, just your economic development manager's report, Wildwood business activity and, you know, this particular Wildwood business that we're, you know, talking to. I think that's the kind of agenda that we could easily have completely off-site, have a full meeting there, adjourn, done,
Okay.
back and everything.
Okay.
So.
Mr.
I want to know why you left Larry's off.
It was my list, that's why.
We'll sneak that one in there at the end, right, right. Or actually, we'll go to Larry's after.
After the-
The,
Yeah.
yeah, the post
Right.
post.
Yeah, one thought, if this is really in a way, by being there, live streaming or recording the meeting at their location, then it kind of does become advertising for that business. How do we create a system or mechanism of how we prioritize which businesses we go to? Because we said, you know, Miller House would be good, Three French Hens could be an option, Thai Bistro, but are we paying a disservice to the other businesses we're not picking?
Yeah.
How
I'm
do
thinking
they
of-
become the business we visit instead of the other one that might not be picked? Is there a list that they can submit or a form they can fill out that says, we would like to be considered to host a meeting at? And then either we place them in a list of, who knows, availability or,
Drawing.
yeah, drawing, that's what I was thinking, maybe randomize, but then you run into availability. How do we pick which one to host it at? Because it does kind of become advertising in a way.
I'd like to see if we run into that problem.
Be a nice problem to have.
First off,
Right.
yeah, that would be a.
Yeah, if we decide on a number, maybe of saying, you know, we're gonna try to do 3 meetings, you know, in 2020.
Yeah.
First come, first serve, and then if we get a whole bunch of responses, and then you can easily, you know, stack those
Because
up
we've
for
already-
future years and stuff. So.
I don't mean to throw out anybody, but we've already had several of these business owners come in and talk with us here in many ways. And so are there other businesses that we need to go out and look at? The lawn and garden company that's down on, what does Wild Horse Creek turn in, or what does Atherton turn into?
Are you talking about Fix?
No, there's a nursery down, there's a
Oh.
nursery.
Fart?
Off Wild Horse Creek?
Centaur.
Sorry, okay, I'm thinking.
If you go down Atherton, across Wild Horse Creek, down that steep hill into the valley, I don't remember what that road is called.
It's
It's- Is
Baxter.
Olive.
Yeah, it's all.
Yeah, Olive. And then there's that nursery that's right at our border, right there. Isn't
That's
that-
actually in
That's-
Chesterfield.
Is that in
Chesterfield.
Chesterfield?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
It's
in
like
Chesterfield.
Baxter Garden.
No, not Baxter Gardens.
No, we pretty much did that in Atherton.
We dead end
That's the
after
one
that,
that's
okay.
concrete frog out front.
Yeah.
I think we dead ended
Or around
the
that spot.
state park or whatever.
The left side's ours, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fix.
Yeah, the left side's ours, I realize that. I'm just thinking of other businesses besides your standard restaurants and retailers. Are there?
Some of the ones off the beaten path might
Yeah.
benefit from this the most.
Mhm, mhm. But I don't have any suggestions because I don't know the names of all of them. But
Okay, so
how do we?
can I make a motion that you want to start with 3 next year or something like that? Or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll
I think
just
three's a good
keep that in mind at maybe like one in the
Early spring.
early spring, summer and fall.
Mhm.
And
Would that work for
then-
everybody?
So April, July, October, or something like
Yeah.
that.
And then
See if
if
we can
you,
do it a
that
little
way.
earlier than April, like March.
Or,
See if we get
yeah.
one going here soon.
Yeah.
Give it a try.
Yeah, that way if you did want to do a garden center, because a lot of them close in the winter.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah. Or, I mean, if we do a cluster, right, like if we did town center, we could walk from business to business to business and have 4 in the same.
Let's get our feet first, maybe.
I was just, if you had overwhelming responses, I was gonna make it work.
If we had a full day to do something, that'd be a walking type of activity, would be nice. But- Okay, so on,
How about, can we just pick months, and would this work for your, if we did, I guess we don't want to do October if that's the budget discussion month, so if we did like March, July, September next year?
Yep, that's fine.
Spread them out a little bit and
Mhm.
see how it goes?
Is that your motion, Mark?
Yep, that'll do.
Second. All right.
Okay, so motion made by Warren, second by Niles, all in favor?
Aye.
And then, as far as the first business that we visit, it doesn't really matter to me, but, since I already talked to the first three there, the Thai Bistro, French Ends, and, Miller House, if we can just check their availability for those three, and then maybe get back to us and see, first come, first serve, and kind of go from there.
And just for our own clarification, are we talking about holding the entire meeting at that business?
Yeah.
Okay. And try and find the best way to either live stream or record right afterwards?
Well, we've already had 3 French hens in Miller House and the YMCA come in and talk to us, right?
No,
Not to this committee, no.
Not
No,
this
they're-
committee?
They've been involved in other
The Miller
committees.
House?
She has.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I spoke to the Miller House, when I spoke to Andy, I talked more about seeing if we had a meeting there to bring in some of her
Support
gig
vendors.
economy,
Yeah, her vendor-
yeah,
other
entrepreneurs
and
that are
stuff like
working
that,
out of there. Mhm.
So to change it up a little bit. so.
That'd be good.
Sure.
And there's dedicated space for us to
dedicated,
sit
right.
in
Exactly.
that one. So that would work out for like the whole meeting, whereas Thai Bistro is really small inside, and if they want to serve people dinner, we're actually in their way.
Yeah.
So we might not want to do the whole.
Unless we're buying dinner, then
Yeah.
they'll throw to see us.
Not a bad idea, yeah.
We could buy dinner on our own, not on the city's dollar. That's a good way to do it. Sometimes you think better outside your little box here. As John's going, I have to go to the Thai Bistro. And Carl's going,
It works places.
we'll buy you.
Are we okay by the city's code, charter, everything, to hold these meetings offsite? There's no prohibitions or anything?
I'm not aware of any prohibitions per se. I've got a couple of things I want to look at, nothing that really is making me say, can't do it, but I just want to make sure that procedurally it's done properly, that's all.
I have a
Yes,
concern.
yes.
Is there a concern about, if we're live streaming at a business, the fact that we could be bringing unintended parties into,
Oh,
video,
recording them as
yeah.
well.
Mhm.
Something for us to consider, yeah.
I don't know. just-
Yeah, if somebody's eating dinner next to you and you're recording and.
And they
you
happen
put
to
their
be with
phone-
someone they're not married to.
Yeah. Hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, you wanna,
Why'd you
you wanna
go there?
expand on that? Just saying, right?
They're in a place of public accommodation, so typically, you can get that with anybody on their phone.
Well,
You might want to put a notice just as courtesy, but
yeah. And John knows this, I know Joe knows this, we've been through this windmill a couple times with P and Z
Mhm.
and site development, visits and such.
Yeah.
So yeah, this will be a public meeting, posted, everything else associated with it, it'd be no different than any of those.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So,
yeah, in terms of selection of places, one thing just to be cognizant of is that it has to be able to accommodate the public. So when you're thinking about subject matter of agendas, if it's something that's going to draw a crowd, you may want to think about where it's located. And that's not.
I haven't seen a big crowd.
Yeah, this crowd.
Fair enough, this is honestly my first one, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And I
That's not
think-
the normal crowd.
I think
Like I said, I-
sometimes we have 3
Sometimes we
people.
have 3 people and they're all from the same subdivision. and they want
Fair
to-
enough.
We're the
So-
speakers, the presenters, and
Yeah.
there you go.
And I think if we massage the agendas enough,
Yeah,
that
I think we'll
it'll
be
be a
okay.
pretty light agenda, so.
I think it would be helpful for all of us to see some of the businesses, but I would like to get sometime next year, something besides a retailer storefront kind of facing thing, because I want to understand how we can help support non-retail businesses. So we have some businesses here in Town Center that we could go chat with.
I know conventionally, we identified LaSalle Retreat Center as one, Marianus is another. They're not necessarily retail, more conference space,
Mhm.
have different needs.
Churches as well.
Yeah, churches as well.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay, so our first visit offsite will be in March. Who do you want to go visit?
We'll talk to the first 3 in the list and see if they're available.
Okay.
We'll make sure that we set the time and place at least a month before.
And then just
Good.
full disclosure with them as far as, you know, we're coming in to intrude into your space, and that way that might scare some of them off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they know what's going on. Okay. And then we would record the meetings and post them?
Yes.
Okay. Rather than try to live stream at an off-site location, there's just too many technical issues involved in that.
From a remote location, the only way you'd be able to live stream is either on a phone using Facebook or YouTube.
Yeah.
And if we're saying that livestream.com is our portal, we want to make sure it goes through livestream.com or
Mhm.
whatever the .com we use is.
I know. As long as we can get it up there for the record at the later time. Okay. Well, thanks for the discussion, guys. Good ideas. Okay, the impact study on Main Street extension is our next fun topic.
Thank you. This topic was also brought up at the last meeting. It was requested to be placed on this agenda. The Main Street extension, I provided a little bit of brief background just to kind of lay the current situation of where we're at. Main Street currently exists in 2 phases. There's the original segment from Taylor Road at the entrance to Deerbergs to the terminus just west of City Hall on Market Street. And there is a second phase of Main Street from Etherton Road west through Main Street Crossing by Payne Family Homes to the new roundabout under construction on Highway 109. Potentially even a phase 3 or phase 4 out towards Manchester Road. The section that we are talking about for the Main Street extension is the piece in between, which is currently local Crestview Drive. It is a local street, it is a private street, it has currently 10 single-family homes immediately fronting on the roadway. The street itself is a privately owned parcel of real property. It has a parcel number, it has an address, it has an owner. The owner of record is deeded to the joint property owners that front on Crestview Drive. As it is a private street, there is a barrier, a vegetated barrier, right between where Main Street dead ends and where Crestview Drive ends at the end of its segment. So there is no public access or use of this roadway other than accessing those private properties. Because it is on a private parcel of real property, we do not control its access or capacity for through traffic. The discussion at the last meeting and the request at the last meeting was to consider now at this point in time thinking about what the economic impact would be to pursue the extension of this future Main Street through Crestview Drive. For use in that discussion, I included a few items, one of which being that in the City Council strategic goals and objectives for 2015 to 2019, Objective 1 does identify and instruct us to complete the Main Street extension. In addition to that, I included a page from the Economic Development Guide, which talks about this undeveloped area and future opportunity at this location. And then I also included this slide from the HR Green Traffic Impact Study that showed, considering a full future build out of the town center, what the impact is to our traffic network, primarily the major arterials, to show the increase in traffic for each of these major streets. The request was to consider what the economic impact might be of extending Main Street and connecting it and converting Crestview Drive from a private local street only for private access to a public two-way road that would open up and connect to Main Street to make it a complete two-way thoroughfare at city standard. In thinking about what the economic impact of this could be, we as the committee or we as staff at City Hall have the ability to try and do our best to come up with what that impact might be based on the data we have available to us. Just for consideration by the committee, I included some verbiage about how this type of work can also be done outsourced by several types of consulting firms in St. Louis, one of which I used to work for, that do this kind of work on a regular basis and have access to more expansive data sets and also subscriptions to paid economic impact model software that allows them to create a more accurate estimate of financial benefit, financial impact based off of future development opportunity. That was just for our discussion, just to know that that opportunity is out there that we might want to consider. I did meet with 3 firms to talk about this project and an opportunity for them potentially down the road. Each of the 3 firms, Development Strategies, Economic Development Resources, and PGAV, said that they were interested. I received letters of interest from 2 of them. The other one is also interested, probably more on an hourly basis until we know exactly what the project might include. But this is something the committee wanted to discuss as far as potentially what the economic impact of connecting this roadway might be, and if it's something that we would like to pursue either in-house or outsourced through a local firm.
I'm going to ask Joe real quickly, if that's okay with the committee, about his perspective on this from a planning side of the house, and has he been approached, or has the Planning and Parks Committee expressed interest in also doing this kind of study, or how we can use that street to be a main thoroughfare?
Planning and Parks Committee really hasn't discussed the Main Street extension. They've kind of respected the fact that the concept or the discussion has been in the Economic Development Committee. But I think both Julian and I would state that regardless of the economic impact, the extension of Main Street is going to have a positive impact on all of Town Center.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes from the residents that would like to be able to go from, let's say, Canterbury, Main Street crossing, Old Grover Estates, Townsend, Windrush, to the developed commercial area of Town Center via an extension of Main Street or vice versa. So if you're asking my opinion, I think we should engage a firm to help us instead of using internal staff. I know it's more in Julian's wheelhouse, but I think he's pretty busy with a lot of things, and that software that's available to a private consultant is not available to us per se. And I think we'd have better information at the end of the process.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with where Mr. Vunich went. I think if we're going to do this, let's go ahead and make specific requests for qualifications from the 3 firms and anybody else to go ahead and proceed with the next steps on this.
I can pass out, just so you have it, the 2 firms that did provide a cost estimate or cost range, PGAV and Development Strategies, both did give me a letter of interest that indicated what their believed process could be for the response to the project, and also what their potential cost budget could include. So at least this gives you an idea, based off of my introduction of the project to them, how each of these 2 well-known firms in St. Louis would approach it. Slight differences between the 2, probably big reason for the cost difference between the 2, but both do these types of projects very frequently and are well suited to do this one as well. When I introduced this to them, I told them this was conceptual early on, just gathering data, and if the committee was interested in pursuing it further, we would meet back again with them with an actual request for a proposal with a finite cost and a better idea of what the project actually is.
I'll make my point as part of a motion.
Okay, you're part of a motion. Go right ahead.
Yeah, then we go ahead and pursue and advertise for RFPs for this economic study of Main Street extension, or Crestview to Main Street extension.
Second.
9 seconds. Mr. Bergel,
I agree, Jim, just timing. You know, we've got other issues about Crestview that we're going to be discussing. If those discussions get all bound up and doesn't go anywhere, does it make any difference whether we have a study of that area or not, if the street's never going to be open?
And yeah, and I think to your point, I don't think the 2 are necessarily joined together per se. It's good to know where the future might hold, if there is that benefit to getting Main Street completed. In particular with the Village Green aspects of it, providing green space for Town Center residents, I think there's there's an upside no matter what. It's just a matter of how big and how soon, right? And so I think, to me, it makes sense. Let's gather the information. We could always delay proceeding on the study, depending on other things, but as long as we're kind of pushing everything one step forward at a time, I'm okay with it.
Well, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and get the cost estimates
Yeah.
for getting the work done, so that as we head into our budget cycle, we know whether that's going to require an additional adjustment or not. Niles was next, and then your turn.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, just, again, this would just be one very small part of, a Main Street extension. That's why I brought it up for this committee is, that you look at the economic development impact. Hopefully the Planning and Parks Committee will be looking at the impact for the Village Green, the just other future development, whether if Ackerley Place comes in, what that does, the Route 109 roundabout, when that gets through, how is that gonna affect people coming down Main Street? And then, you might have excess traffic coming down Crestview just because they get lost. They think they're going to Deerbergs and they're at the dead-end street. And also maybe stack it with, police services, how would it affect, hopefully the Board of Public Safety could look at, how would a Main Street extension, get response times down, with a new east-west thoroughfare through there. So I hope that all parts of the city are looking into this very important, future of Wildwood. And so I think it would be great to get our end going sooner than later. So.
Lauren?
Okay, so my only comment is, and I'm not sure if it should precede the motion or not, do we need to set the parameters of what the bid order is going to have first before we vote to put the bid order? Because right now, we're comparing a fruit, I made a joke earlier, a fruit basket to an apple with the price differences, and I'm not clear what we're requesting. So do we need to do that first, or?
It would be good to have.
Okay.
Some firms take a look at the development area, figure out based off our zoning, the land use planning, what type of development could go there,
Okay.
and then give it a best case scenario, build it out, figure out the lot coverage, the building square footage, how much in property tax, sales tax, highest and best use, what's it going to generate at full build out. Some are a little more conservative or realistic and think, okay, that's fine, but what could actually be done here? What is feasible to be developed here? We could create a 35-acre downtown, but a developer might say, well, that's a little bit much for this area. We think it's more like 10 or 15. So some instruction to the firm might help that, where we give them a little bit more instruction of, we'd like you to talk to a couple of development companies, figure out what might be realistic, take that, use that as your model for what could be developed here, and then punch that through here.
Yeah, I would like, sorry, in terms of, economic forecasting and anticipated sales tax revenue or the types of businesses that could go in, I think it would be helpful to consider, what what the economy is like now, two, what it was like after the recession in case we hit another one. I like that this one included, different methods of funding, whether that's a new like special sales tax district. I'm sure they'll do a standard multiplier effect. I agree with Niles that it should include some impact of infrastructure, including public safety. Do we have enough fire trucks to currently handle whatever alarm fire that would, take place there? And, do we have some sort of policy that we're moving towards as a city, or we would offset, anything that we did there with new trees, and there would be costs associated with that or something like that as a city? So, yeah, I don't know if I'm missing a lot more, but I guess are they going to use, when we get this in terms of tax dollars created in jobs, are they going to, I would like to see it broken down by the difference between jobs that are potentially minimum wage and jobs that are salary based, where it's the opposite of a bedroom community, largely because Aliceville has put in a lot of minimum wage places and they can't get the workers. They, you know, they're shipping them from 3 hours away. There's bus route problems. Taco Bell closed half a day. So I want to know what level of job is created. I don't want them to say this created 300 new jobs. I want to know, are these jobs above poverty level? Are they professional level? And what type of people are we attracting? So that is what I would request, if that makes sense.
All very valid points, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I think one of the things that I would like to see for the property owners, since we're talking about their street and their land, is what would the economic development impact be for their properties? You know, like, how could this increase the value of your, of your property, so that when those discussions are had, that, we might have some real numbers in place that says, hey, this is what, could happen.
Is all of this run considered downtown district? I thought it was, but I just want to make sure there wasn't any straggling.
For the time being.
Oh,
So-
and
For the time being, there's
the other thing is, we want to make sure that we're, because they're doing a general overview of best case and worst case. They might do a store that is repetitive with another local area store, and they might include that into the predicted sales tax. So they may say, you know what, we feel like Three French Hens does really well. It produces a good, we recommend that as part of your local store to duplicate, but that could in fact cannibalize sales somewhere else. And so I guess my question is, are they actually getting into the sector, like the basic codes of what?
I think they will. I know in some of this from the development strategies one, they talk about new development scenarios, focusing exclusively accommodating retail and entertainment development. Second, incorporates residential, primarily the western portion. Third, reflect more mixed use. So they're looking at different types of uses. I'm not sure of the actual store and breakdown of store, but
Okay.
that would probably have an impact on land value, sales tax amounts.
Right.
I think that would have to go into the formula in some way.
I just don't want them to, I don't want to spend money on a survey and they're like, you should put a Walmart here.
Yeah.
I just want the
Yeah.
parameter to kind of include what we would realistically like go through planning.
And I believe most of these different software services like RIMS do use those types of codes for what types of businesses are included.
Okay.
Because that's how they figure out the sales amounts, the taxes, the employees, all those kind of fit into that category.
Got it.
Sure.
I'm curious how this interplays with the traffic study that was done some time ago and what the status of that study is. Seems like I haven't heard anything since it was originally brought up. The one where, the study that was done about what the future traffic impacts were gonna be.
The traffic analysis has been completed by HR Green. It was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is the entity that requested its development, and then thereafter presented to City Council as well. As a sidebar, we also provided it to the Town Center Update team, so they had the benefit of that knowledge as well, as they looked at the issues in Town Center.
And that included additional build-out of town center, did it not?
Yes, it actually took a 20-year window, so from current conditions to 20 years out into the future.
So
I think
did,
that's what Julian has on the screen right now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I believe
Is that okay?
Rick,
That's
who
fine.
worked closely with HR Green on this, can speak to it better than I can, but I believe the full build-out numbers that you see, HR Green concluded that that new traffic can still be handled by a current traffic network, by our current infrastructure. That there were recommended improvements and enhancements, but that amount of traffic can still be maintained by our current system.
I mean, these are all what-if scenarios that every city has to go through. So there's no perfect perspective, but I think it's valuable that one of the tenets that we became the city in the first place was because we didn't want to have 109 and our entire community look like Ellisville, Baldwin, Manchester, De Pere, Town and Country, and all that kind of stuff, as far as that's their development engine, so to speak. So I would like us to be able to look at have a firm look at some alternatives that we can give to Julian to say, these we think might work out here, based upon your demographics, based upon what you as a community want to try to do, based upon the types of individuals that live in your community, based upon your design ramifications as a city. I want all of that considered through this process so that we don't turn into what's further east down Manchester necessarily and are solely dependent on retail. I think we're all smarter and more thoughtful in that process, that we look at, okay, how do we garner higher wage earners, law firms, corporate headquarters, things that you've heard me talk about this before. If you look at what Clayton did, I'd rather that happen in our town center here in some form. Not that I want 15, 16-story buildings in Wildwood. I think that's inappropriate, but if we can look at putting some corporate emphasis or some white-collar worker emphasis on some of those businesses. Let David say something.
We have a motion on the floor, and I'd like for Carla to repeat it, because I forgot what we originally said.
It's the motion to pursue RFP for the economic impact of Main Street extension.
In our discussion with Laura's comments, did that expand at all? Was there any amendment to that? That is it.
No.
I think it was more to fine tune down what goes in the RFP, so everybody's responding to the same bid request, and it's apples to apples, not fruit baskets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just
I just have a
parameter
quick
definition.
Yes, Lauren.
So, one thing I'm unsure about, because it's when they're approaching developers, which is good, plural, are they approaching it as the cost and likelihood for one developer or multiple? And the reason why I ask is because when you think of a downtown, you kind of have a mix of styles and types of businesses that work together that would still be coherent with our architectural review board vision. And what we have with Deerbirds is a shopping center. And so my thought is that developers plural might be a good goal, because then everything does not look like one giant shopping center, but has the charming eclectic feel of a town.
Yes, I believe that the idea, speaking to the last firm this afternoon, is that getting the developers' input from their professional expertise, looking at this area, how much of it reasonably, feasibly could be developed, and by what combination of uses. We could say we want the whole thing to be downtown. They could pump out a model that shows it all as downtown commercial, but that's not realistic in this area. So if they look at the area, let's just say of them 20 acres, because given our acquisition of these two properties, the prior proposal by Tony Bosworth to do 12 single-family homes on these two properties, and knowing there's one property left in between the 3 acres, really the main impact for future economic benefit is this section. How much of that 20 acres could be commercial? How much of it should be more of a mixed use? How much of it should have more of a residential transition towards Atherton and Canterbury? I think that talking to a developer, getting their expertise of what's feasible at this location in our market. Maybe not them as a developer saying, I would develop all that myself, but so we could hear from them how much they believe of this could be developed and by what combination of uses.
Okay, so did we give you enough parameters then?
I think so.
We're good, okay, cool.
And then I've got one other question, just a second, Dennis. The area where you see the church, there's Taylor Road, there's Manchester. That corner in there, is that considered downtown?
This is not. This property is, this is not.
That's
There.
not, okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Got it.
And just
But
for,
that could be workplace though.
But not
So,
downtown.
and workplace can be commercial.
and just as a T-cut update, basically the two properties of the latitude 38. So basically, if you run that straight line up and down there, those were recently, the committee had voted on a motion to include those in the final recommendation to council, that those be neighborhood general versus downtown district, to allow for both business and residential development. So I think that's something that even if we're not done with that recommendation, even if it haven't went through full council, that's something that they should look at. And then also just knowing that we've already done like the prime, where we used, commercial on the ground level and, neighborhood general on the airspace, that could also be an option for those properties as well. So I wouldn't want to put it through their spanking machine as only commercial,
Yeah.
because we've already had some
Yeah.
other developments that are in the works, so.
I just want to make sure that they look at all of the available space and not just those 20 acres.
And
so that we can
because,
fill it out.
because the city does not levy a property tax, and because we are part of the pool and not point of sale, the immediate economic impact might be more of an indirect impact.
Mhm.
There is some value to utility, gross receipts, business license fees, the indirect impact of the employees that work there spending dollars in our area. But most of it will be that indirect. How many employees does it generate? What new traffic can be generated by this area? How will that benefit the other businesses of this area? Because building a building or building a retail store doesn't immediately generate real dollars back to the city because of our lack of a property tax or because of us being a pool. One of the firms, I believe it was Development Strategies, mentioned that a special taxing district like a SID could levy an extra property tax, or actually sales tax or property tax, that could then be redirected back to the project. So that could be an economic benefit or economic impact, where a certain amount of growth could generate additional revenue that doesn't necessarily go to a pool, but instead gets used back in the area for new development.
Is that like the community crossings district? Is that
Mhm.
Yeah,
similar
crossings
to
is the
that?
same.
And where does that just end at the?
It's this rectangle.
Right, okay.
And Joe can jump in at any time. That CID was primarily used to pay for the public parking garage next to the hotel, the Main Street streetscape, the fountain improvements.
Street piers, the clock tower, the amenities that ultimately became part of Longwood Town Center project.
Okay. Any further discussion at this point? The charge is that Julian goes back to these groups
With an RFP.
with an RFP.
Would we like to bring that back to this committee or just maybe send it
That's
around? Okay.
You want it to come back to the committee
The
for
RFP
review?
before it goes out?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, no, I thought you meant after the RFP into the full council. No, you can. I'm indifferent, if you want to send it out.
I would say, rather than have it necessarily as a topic for this committee, send it out to the committee members prior to dissemination to those individuals, so if anybody has any major issues that they want to attend to or have added. Could we do that through an email stream, guys, or would you prefer that we bring it back to this committee?
That's fine.
I think most of us in this room have done work by email on a routine basis, so.
So we'll prepare a draft and send it to the committee by email.
Yeah.
And then maybe give a deadline for comment. If we don't receive any, or we'll
Yeah.
send it out after this.
1 week for, 1 week deadline for comment. When do you want to try to get it completed and on the street?
We can have it drafted next week, maybe sent it to the committee by the end of next week, which would be November 1, to give the committee the week by November 8th, so we can send it right after Veterans Day.
Yeah, let's get it done before the holidays creep in. Let's move quick.
And we run into an issue around the holidays with the availability of the firms to respond.
Exactly.
Uh, Hopefully, at least we can give them a heads up beforehand that it's coming too. That might be a little bit easier.
Yep. That'd be a good idea too. So ready to go? I thought we were,
We do need
We haven't
to vote.
voted yet.
Yeah.
okay, yes, we do. I'm sorry, I thought we'd already voted on it.
Call the question.
Thank you. Call
Do
the
I-
question.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Niles.
Okay, that's Niles seconded. I thought he did. Okay, could we have all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Julie. We talked kind of in an email about the equestrian activities because we knew we were going to have additional things to go over tonight. Do we want to hold off and reschedule it?
I think we already agreed on that.
We agree on that.
Just want to ask once again. Okay, how about we go through your 4 information items and then the snowman search, and we can then roll into the closed session.
I provided my monthly manager's report to everybody, dated October 22nd. Just a few of the primary items. On the first page, hopefully everybody's seen it by now or heard in the weekly update, that Treats Unleashed bought all 5 of the Bentley's Pet Store locations in St. Louis and Kansas City. So that means that Treats Unleashed now owns our Bentleys in the Deerbergs Plaza. I've already talked to the owner at Treats Unleashed, Teresa Miller, who lives in Wildwood. Just a nice coincidence. We're meeting with their the marketing team next week, just to talk about how we can help them out at their new store. Simmons Bank did now mount their new signage on their storefront and the retaining wall out front. Let's see. Under new business, we met with the owner of Main Street Creamery this morning. He's working with electrician, plumber, and general contractor already. He's still hoping to be open end of November. He still has to submit plans, hasn't done that part yet, but right now he's trying to get all the people on board to pull together the information he needs to submit plans for approval. But he's really targeting to be open by the holiday season. Empire Nutrition is the new smoothie bar over by Wildwood Pub and Letty Lou's. They're working on their interior painting right now. They've been pretty active on social media. Their storefront sign has been mounted. They hopefully will be open by the end of the year as well. Speaking of Letty Lou's, though, hopefully everybody saw what happened with them earlier this month with the fire in their kitchen. Big Chief has already done a fundraiser for them. They hosted a lemonade for Letty's a couple of weeks ago. There was pretty significant damage within the kitchen at Letty Lou's. There was water and smoke damage at 212 Degrees of Wellness next door. There was smoke damage at Earl Jones Properties. Not a very good thing would happen with them at all whatsoever. I know a few other groups in our area, business owners at WBA, are working on fundraising efforts as well to try and generate some funding. The restaurant itself will be okay. The building will be okay. They're more concerned about the employees that have been at Letty Lou's for a long time and rely on income on daily tips and wages that they'll be missing for a good long period of time. So just keep an eye out for that.
Julian, can I
Yes.
ask you a question
Please.
before you turn the page? As far as this transition from Bentley's to Treats Unleashed, they had a program there where you could buy so many dog washes ahead of time. Are they going to honor that,
I
or?
believe so, yeah. It's still the same local staff and management. The store manager is staying on board. I believe the marketing person is still on board as well. They will work to rebrand, new signage and everything, but without getting confirmation from them, I'm confident that anything from beforehand will still be honored.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, they're not changing the layout of the store. Treats Unleashed was always more focused on the baked goods, the treats themselves. So you'll see a lot more of that, but there will still be the dog washes, the toys, the treats, the apparel, the things you can find in a pet store. Number 9, Patterson Family Farms hosted their grand opening with the West County Chamber October 5th. Councilmember Stevens and I were there that morning. Did a ribbon cutting with the Chamber. It was a live stream on the Chamber's Facebook page. It's really a great store, pretty unique. She's pretty active in the community, has been doing farmers markets forever, and just decided to take the step and open a full-time year-round general store and boutique. They have ready-to-eat meal kits, and you can find food and embroidered gifts and home goods and anything else in there. They're also working towards their sign, hopefully in the near future. Wildwood Workspaces is our newest co-working space. It hopes to be more of like a tech-focused incubator with space available for rent by the month. desks, open working area. It's in the two-story building across the street above Benedetto's and Table 3. They took over about 2,500 square feet. The owner of it is the owner of Architect Now, Kevin Grossnicholas, which owns the other business down the hallway. They're working towards opening. They're furnishing the space right now and hope to be open later this year as well.
That'd be a good business to go see.
We were working with an out-of-state developer that's considering a new multifamily project in Town Center. He hopes to present to the preliminary development zoning review committee either later this year or early next year. And then I think the only other one that I have that everybody should have noticed on the way in is on the last page, number 5, the WBA is hosting their Halloween Wild Walk right now. Hopefully you saw, if the bounce house was up, I'm not sure if it was.
Yes.
The little main street of business vendors lining the field next to the theater. They have little Christmas tree lighting, decorating the walkway. I think there's about 8 or 10 business vendors out there. The event goes until 8 o'clock, so whenever we get out of here, everybody can go on down and hopefully stop by before they shut down.
And watch out for little trick-or-treaters.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
Free hot dogs, I think she has 500 free hot dogs tonight. I think Miller House is out there doing craft drinks. There is costume contest and trick-or-treaters, so feel free to stop by. I think that's it on that report. And then on the snowman search, this is just for your information. Same event we had last year. I just want to let the committee know that we sent out the invitation letters about 3 weeks ago. We've already put our information up on the website, and as of this afternoon, we have 40 businesses already signed up to participate, and the deadline is next Friday. So we hope to get to at least the 54 we had last year, but it seems like we might exceed that already.
They have more snowmen than they have things down.
Scarecrows?
Yeah, scarecrows.
I don't know, that's a hard one. I think there's over 100 scarecrows.
Ah, dang, Eureka.
They've been doing it for so many years, though, too.
And Eureka Chamber runs the Scarecrow Fest, so they have staff devoted to running the Scarecrow Fest every year. This year, the Scarecrow Fest started adding the selfie component that our Snowman Festival had, and they also added cash prizes at the same intervals that we have. So we just kind of keep borrowing ideas off each other.
Nice.
Imitation's the greatest form.
There you go.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Julian.
Thanks, Julie. I guess we can go into closed session at this moment.
I will stop the live stream.
You need a motion for that?
We need a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by,
I'm forgetting my name.
no. Just thinking of a lot of different things.
You're like,
Well, nobody can see your names anyways.
Bye.
Opposed? Abstained? No one. Thank you all for a very good meeting this evening, for good discussions.